Yeah, sorry. I'm actually in Vevey, which is very nice, but I need some Wi-Fi, so I had to go back to the hotel. How are you? Where are you?
I'm in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's amazing that I get to come onto these kind of talks at not at 3 in the morning, because a lot of the talks that have been happening on Zoom in the past year is just, time difference. But
Of
I'm really
course, that
happy
must
to
be
be
hard
here.
for you. Nice. And would you want to introduce yourself briefly and tell me who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Dee May. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I am a journalist and I run my own publication. It's called Dates, whereby I use food to begin conversations that wouldn't be otherwise brought to a table. So that's why I'm here today to speak to everyone. Well, just it's you and me now, but
Nice. So my name is Charlotte. I'm in Switzerland right now with the Food Culture Days Biennale. And I normally live in Berlin, but I'm here in Switzerland right now. And I lived for a year in Lisbon and a year in Rome. And I have a project with a friend of mine, Lena, and we're doing interviews while we're here now to also interview some of the artists and talk about kind of the convergence of food and society, but also architecture, because we are actually architects and trained to be architects in Berlin. But we very strongly believe in the idea that, so we run this project called Pionira, and we very strongly believe in the idea that architecture needs to be rethought from the bottom. So it needs to consider landscape again and gardening and how we live within the built environment. And all of these things come together to kind of make up our project, searching for a somewhat holistic design and what holistic architecture can be. And last year we interviewed a man in a German city called Bamberg, which is a city known for gardening and gardening within the city walls. And that's what I thought I might bring as a short introduction. And maybe we want to watch a short video and then speak about it a bit.
Sure, sounds cool.
Let's see if I can. Oh, hi. Somebody else just joined.
Hello, sorry, a little late to join.
No problem. We were just introducing ourselves. Maybe, Ime, you want to say briefly again who you are? Okay, sorry, I can't hear you very well yet.
Sorry, okay.
It's kind of breaking up. Is it Joe's? Yours?
Yeah, hold on. Let me just see. Okay, is that better? Can you hear me? Okay.
I think it might be fine. You need to say some more so we can hear
it. Yeah. Hi. So my name's Joss Allen. I'm calling in from Helsinki, in Finland. But I'm originally from Scotland, but I've been living here for the last 2 years. And I guess I'm an artist, curator, cultural worker, and also a gardener. And so I kind of use a practice to do with kind of exploring other ecological ways of being through kind of socially engaged art practice. That's a very brief introduction.
Is there any chance you could organize headphones, Josh?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, give me 2 minutes.
Okay.
I think that's better.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah, it's crisp now.
Nice. So maybe you just want to say the last sentence again. You're also a gardener, and then?
Yes, and I guess for the last kind of 6 or 8 years, I've been developing kind of projects that explore relationships with plants and kind of other ecological ways of being, kind of through a socially engaged arts practice.
Great. And Dime, do you want to repeat briefly who you are and where you're from?
Yes, I'm Dime. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm a journalist and I run my own print publication, which is called Plates. It's international and I'm interested in using food to begin conversations that otherwise wouldn't be brought to the table, like social justice, human rights, environment. So I use food as a starting point.
Great. And lastly, okay, now I can hear another sound. Hi, welcome. I assume your name is Peril, but I can't hear you yet. Your microphone is still off. Now
Hi.
I can hear you. Hi.
Sorry, I'm late. There was some issues with the computer, so I'm on my phone now. I'm sorry I missed your introductions.
No problem. Either we just do them again briefly in one sentence. It might be nice because then we know who we're talking to.
If you're okay with that, that would be great.
Yeah, maybe you want to start.
Sure. Well, I'm an art student, and I am focused in my art in bringing people together with food experiences, which is also why I came across this platform, and I thought it would be really nice to talk to people and see what they were thinking about. Yeah, and then this can be in any format. So I guess mainly social design, but it could be an installation, it could be a product. Yeah, I think that's it.
And from where are you dialing in?
Oh, I am currently in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands.
Wow, this is nice. Everybody from somewhere else. So maybe I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Charlotte, and I run a project called Pionira with a friend of mine, Lena. And we started it last year, and it's a platform. We are both architects, and we collect projects from architecture, ecology, and crafts, and portray the people and philosophies behind them, because we strongly believe that sustainable architecture doesn't necessarily mean only the technical aspects, but also the immeasurable aspects and the idea of thinking architecture as a whole. So the concept of agriculture, the concept of living within the built environment, and designing our built environment with sort of a broader sense and a broader idea. So that's where we come from. And Lena and I are here in Switzerland with Food Culture Days in these days to interview some of the artists and to kind of do a little coverage on who's here. And I'm very excited to speak to all of you today. And I'm happy we are 4 now. So maybe I pass the word either to Joss or to Dime.
Sure, I can go next. So yes, my name is Joss Allen. I'm calling in from Helsinki in Finland at the moment. I'm originally from Scotland, and I guess I'm an artist, curator, art worker. You never really know exactly the best title with. I think I changed time of people, but yeah, I guess broadly I've been working with kind of socially engaged arts practice. Let's say. I'm also kind of a gardener, maybe an amateur gardener, but I'm really interested in kind of plant-human relations, kind of exploring different ecological ways of being, and the garden, both kind of in a literal and a sense, is a really interesting place to kind of stage these relationships.
Sorry to say, Joss, your microphone is crisp now, but it's almost like your cable. Sometimes the cable hits something, and that's when it gives like a technical.
Is it a bit crackly or something?
Normally not. Normally it's perfect, but in some moments it feels like the cable is hitting something, and then it gives.
Okay.
But it might be fine. Maybe it's also just me hearing it. I don't know if the others are okay. I can still hear you well, so I think it's fine.
Okay, I'll maybe try and put some. I actually the mic, the camera on my laptop's not working, so I'm also on my. So it's maybe that it's like sitting on something that's kind of vibrating or something.
I think it's fine.
Hold on.
Dime, would you like to continue?
Am I introducing myself to Parel? Yes, sure. So, goedemorgen. I'm Dime. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I am a print publication to use food to talk about issues wouldn't normally be brought to a table to seek out the report.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you anymore. Can the others still hear Dime? Maybe it's your internet connection, but it was perfect
No.
before, so it's probably coming back.
How is it? Is it good? Is it still?
Maybe you can try to turn your video off for a moment so that at least we can hear you clearly.
Sure. Yeah. How about?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's better. Could you say something again, Dime? Can we hear you? Not really.
How is it now?
I think it's better now.
No, we can just power through. It's all good.
Okay, we'll manage somehow. So
Okay,
here's
so
what I suggest.
We'll just power.
Here's what I suggest we do. I suggest I explain the rules of this dialogue briefly. So the idea is that there are three main pillars, three main sort of guidelines. One, to speak from your heart, always. To be brief and precise, and to listen as you would like to be listened to. And then there was the idea of everybody having maybe using something, a small token around them that we could use sort of when we want to say something, we could hold the token into the camera or pick it up so that we can talk, but maybe that we are just the four of us, we also don't need the tokens. We can see how we go. I think we can also raise our hands and just let each other speak. I'm sure it's going to work well. And lastly, I'm going to give you a brief little input from my side to start our conversation. It's going to be about 2 minutes, and I'm going to share my screen with you, and hopefully you guys will be able to see it. Can you guys see my screen and hear it? I wasn't sure if you guys can hear and see it. No? Okay, then I'm not sure. Maybe now. Maybe it took a while.
Now it's working. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is Wilhelm Schubert. We interviewed him last year in Bamberg. He used to be, or he still is, a horticulturist, and he worked for ecological land gardening in Bamberg and all of Bavaria for most of his life. And he runs solidary gardens within the city of Bamberg now.
näher an das Produkt herangeführt. Ne? Also Sie sehen das, das ist der Stadt Gemüse wächst. Natürlich kann hier Gemüse ernten. Und das ist ja auch ein Umdenken auch, ne? Um das Gemüse mehr wertzuschätzen. Ne? Es hat ja einen guten Ruf, Gemüse. Es ist sehr gesund. Und man soll ja weniger Fleisch essen, sagen alle. Und der Preis ist ja immer noch bezahlbar. Gemüse ist immer noch, wenn ich saisonal einkaufe und regional, das weiß man ja auch, dass Kinder oft nicht mehr wissen, wo die Lebensmittel herkommen, wo eine Bohne wächst oder wo die Milch herkommt, sagen wir mal so. Da ist viel verloren gegangen. Früher war das einfach bekannter und man kauft im Supermarkt rein, ist alles abgepackt und man kann nicht mehr kennen, wo ist das gewachsen, wie ist das gewachsen. Und ich habe auch viel mit Kindern zu tun gehabt, irgendwie noch im Dienst war, Kindergärten, kamen dann mit den Kindern und haben dann Pflanzenraten gemacht und so. Hat man genau gemerkt, manche haben einen Garten daheim, die haben alles gewusst und manche haben überhaupt nichts gewusst. Die haben halt irgendwo in der Stadt wohnen und hatten keinen Zugang zu so einem Wissen.
So I hope you could see that and hear that. Oh no, unfortunately, we lost someone along the way. Maybe she can dial back in. So I'm just going to try to introduce our dialogue with a little sound. Maybe we can all snap our fingers together to open the dialogue. Nice, you're back, Farrell. I hope you can hear us. Would anybody like to start? Would anybody like to start on the topic of between the cracks and how we should nurture community gardens?
I'd like to nominate our fellow gardener here.
I think that would be a very good idea.
I regret that now. Yeah, where to start?
Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your motivation of gardening and the idea why you decide to pick it up alongside your usual work and what your purpose is behind gardening. I would be very interested in that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess for me, I'm interested in the work of Natasha Myers. I don't know if people are familiar with her work. She was a plant and now, I think, a kind of anthropologist, but she's interested in human relations. And she sort of talks about how gardens are places where we stage our relationship with the non-human world. And interesting because I think it's in the garden that we can think about the kind of stories, narratives which.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I really want to hear what you say, but I still can't because of the sound somehow. I don't know, Dime and Peril, can you hear him or do you have the same disturbance with the sound?
The same crackly sometimes.
It's a pity because then we can't hear properly. Maybe you remove the headphones again. I don't really know what the best.
Yeah. So the other thing I can try still kind of me is I can call back on my laptop, but the video might not work, but the sound's probably better. So it
would be nice maybe because it would be important.
Yeah. I mean, is that better? Can you hear me better now?
No, unfortunately not really.
Okay, give me 2 minutes. I'll try my laptop. If that's better.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, no.
So we're here again, the initial two.
Yes.
But I would love to know more about your publication. I think I can already see it behind you, right? How did it come about that you launched Tables, and what it is that you do with it? What is your purpose behind it, and what is it? Who do you try to reach?
Plate. So like the internet now, not side. So let me know if you can still hear me. Okay. You still hear
It's
me?
okay. It was
Okay.
better before, but it's
So,
okay.
2018. Turn on camera. Maybe it'll work better. Okay.
Sure, you
How's the
can try that.
audio? Thumbs up. Okay. Bye. And so, welcome back. But until then, I saw plates out of as a way of reclaiming space and having. Ooh, all internet connections are so bad. Oh, that was you. Okay.
That was just me trying to speak to the technical support if there's anything we can do.
Okay. Sure. Well, yeah. So, I guess to reclaim space because it was also born out of a way of frustration, I guess, like with all the representation about food from Southeast Asia, and it was always the white male chef who suddenly appeared in Asia and spent 2 weeks in a third world country and became the expert of a dish, and how many people from third world nations never really thought to appreciate their own food until it became popular or trendy in Western media, like until, say, Jenna Lawson thinks pandan is the in food, or until jackfruit is the in food, then it becomes something to talk about. Whereas when an Asian talks about it, it's always ridiculed, usually, and there's a lot of questioning about the where it comes from, is it clean, is it safe? I guess that was one way of using plates. It was my way of reclaiming the narrative and providing alternative narratives to what I was seeing out there that I wish existed, that had always existed for me as a journalist. But I never really found that when I was in uni or even as I was consuming travel and food media. There was never really something I could connect with. And now this is, I guess, a way for me to show all the intangible cultures from indigenous cultures, from just even from homes, for us to be proud of what we have at home and to show it to the world. So I guess I'm doing my part of that slowly, like with every issue. And Shas is back.
Absolutely. And I think the value of food, it's a very good point that you make also regarding the value of your own food, that sometimes you need an outside perspective to be able to value it again. I think it's interesting how that happens a lot with food. All of a sudden, the own recipes become valuable again because a third party sees it as valuable. But Joss, now we can listen to you again.
Yeah, hopefully this is better.
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, I've borrowed my partner's laptop. She was in the background screaming at me, being like, "What are you doing? Just borrow my laptop." So.
She's right. Great, thank you.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I guess, I mean, I can carry on from what I said before, but just quickly before that, I think particularly like for me coming from Scotland, where like there's this sort of really poor food culture, or at least it's perceived to be really poor, you know, where it's this kind of like, you know, when you think of Scotland, you don't think of particularly good food. But actually, you know, this has also happened in Scotland, where these kind of like this mixing of different food cultures has made people kind of revitalize the food culture there and look at some of the ingredients that grow there, the opportunities for foraging, that has really started to like kickstart this kind of change in the food culture, which I think has been really interesting to kind of observe over the last maybe 10 years or something.
And what do you think brought about that change, that all of a sudden that was spurred?
Yeah, I guess it's difficult to sort of to pinpoint, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with kind of food trends and kind of some of it definitely filters down from these sort of high-end restaurants, you know, and the kind of, you know, the way that they started to treat different ingredients and the kind of experimentation that they bring, and that obviously filters down through a lot of social media and these kind of things, and has an effect. But I think it's also, I also think it's to do with food growing movements as well, right? That there has been this kind of resurgence in community gardens and allotments, and this doesn't just provide the space for people to grow their own food. It also provides the space for a different kind of imaginary, for like thinking differently about food.
Sure.
You know, and I think that, you know, once you start to develop that relationship in a garden, you know, with different plants, with the soil, all these kind of things, you know, it doesn't just like nourish you through the food you get. It also nourishes you in all these other ways that make you start to go, oh, actually, this plant here, this nettle, I know I can use this differently, or this dandelion, you know, these things that you might not have seen before. You know, you start to notice, you start to develop these different relationships, and I guess that's what I was trying to say before, is actually that for me, these community gardens, it's not that I'm not interested in the fact that they provide spaces for growing food, but I think it's the other things that they really develop that I find really interesting. These kind of different relationships, the way that they change how you think about the non-human world, and they do that in a really interesting way, like what Robin Wall Kimmerer in her book Braiding Sweetgrass says. They help you form this practical reverence, and I think that's a really important thing to nurture in a garden. You know, this sense of practical reverence.
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable point. Also, because community gardens, given their scale, probably cannot feed all of our cities, which is not the idea behind it. It's rather the idea that they have a plethora of value and of quality that goes far beyond the mere production of food. And just like you say.
Yeah, especially for my own experience, because I was running a project back in Scotland that was funded by the Climate Challenge Fund, which is a government fund supporting communities to reduce their carbon emissions through kind of lots of different projects, quite often growing projects. And on the whole, that sounds like a really good thing and a really valuable thing. But when we were running the project, we really started to question the kind of narrative that this top-down government-led initiative was telling. And in a way, we started to worry, because we're like, okay, yes, learning to grow your own food is a really good thing. It's really valuable. But when you only value it on a kind of one-dimensional level, and in this case, it was about like reducing carbon emissions. What was happening, in effect, we felt, was the government was pushing responsibility of dealing with what is a societal problem onto individuals, and saying, you know, almost saying like, okay, now you have to deal with this problem by learning to grow your own food. And that can really mask the responsibility of governments, of corporations, of that kind of change as well, by saying, you know, it's you as a community that needs to deal with this now. And so I kind of have a problem with that. I think, yes, growing food is great, but it's also, you know, not everyone has access to land, the resources, all these things that you need to do it. And I think you have to be aware of that as well.
And do you think that the state could incentivize community gardens by, for example, making lots available, or by making lots within the city, maybe restructuring them or transforming them in order to give them to gardening?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's completely possible, and I think they can become really important social spaces as well. You know, and it's not just about the growing the food. I think it's well within government's capacity to do that, but I think it also has to, you know, bear in mind that not everyone is able to grow their own food, and
of course,
and it shouldn't be the kind of the direction that things going is that.
Yeah.
You know. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking up a lot of space.
Dime, are you still here? Did you turn your camera off so that we can hear you better? Okay, I hope she's still here.
Mm.
She might be back in a moment. And how is it? How come that you're in Helsinki now and no longer in Scotland?
My partner moved here about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And so once a project that I was running in Scotland finished, then the plan was to move here.
And do you find a very different approach to food in Finland than in Scotland? Do you see it as a very different domain?
Yeah, I think it is. I think in Finland there's like sort of perceived to be this very different relationship with nature. You know, that people are very much more in touch with nature or appreciate it, and I think it's much more complicated than that here, for sure. But Helsinki as a city is really very green compared to a lot of other cities, and I think there are some really some interesting things going on here in relation to food, for sure. There's a lot of kind of allotments in the city, but again, you know, these are allotments that you usually would have to wait 10, 20 years or something to get on.
Oh wow! Okay.
You know, it's like many big cities. I think that there's not enough of them compared to the amount of people that actually want to garden or want to.
Yeah, that's
food.
a good question, I think, because if there is such a big sort of voluntary movement to garden now that we can feel in a lot of cities, how could we find the space that we could sort of reappropriate for community gardening and for a larger scale gardening, perhaps? Because I remember that when I was in New York a couple of years ago, I visited a friend of mine in Brooklyn. She lives in Bed-Stuy, and she showed me all of these community gardens that were on the way, and they were the most beautiful, incredible lots kind of between these very tall houses. And she said that they are kept by the people from the neighborhood, and that when one is not there, the other can come and water the plants, and that it typically works very well. And it was also a lot of lower income housing around it, but she said that people also use it as kind of an outdoor space because they have no balconies and no use of public space. Of course, they can go to the park, but a community garden can be almost also a shelter in an exterior perspective, which I think is very interesting. But I think your point is very important of saying, how can we make this accessible in order to make it available for the people who want to do community gardening? Because if there's a lot of willpower but no space for it, then that is also difficult, I guess. And do you know of any models that already work well in this sense? Hi, Dime, are you back? We can see you. I hope we can hear you. Ah, perfect.
Please
Here you
carry
are.
on.
Yeah, we were just talking about the idea how community gardens can become accessible for more people. And I was asking Joss whether he knows an example where a city or a community manages to have accessibility to community gardens on a larger scale, kind of where the demand and supply of people wanting to do gardening is matched.
Yeah, that's tricky, and actually, I can't think off the top of my head of a good example that really covers that. But I can think of another example that I think maybe helps to illustrate like the kind of uses of these spaces and also the design of them and who gets to design them. And this is an example I really like in Copenhagen, and I've forgotten the artist's name and also the name of the park, but anyway, it'll come to me. But there was a park in Copenhagen, and they really wanted to redesign it because it had become a space where these like daytime drinkers would hang out. And I guess for a city, it was like no one wanted to go there or something because people were drinking beers. And they invited this artist to work on the development of it. And he was really smart because instead of saying like, okay, we're going to redesign the space and make it more accessible for people that want to access like natural green spaces, that want to sit in a park and maybe could grow things or take their kids there. He actually went to the daytime drinkers and said, what do you want from this park? How can we design a park that makes you feel safe, that's accessible for you, that gives you the kind of things that you want in public space? And so they designed the park around the daytime drinkers, so that they created a little space where they were sort of partly, they could be kind of hidden, but it opened up into a more kind of public space. So they could be hidden, but they are also not hiding, so they weren't kind of in a, and And I just thought it was just a really brilliant way to kind of turn a problem on its head and be like, okay, who is it that we're actually designing these spaces for, and what kind of things do they need from it, rather than trying to kind of exclude people or, you know. And so I just wonder how that kind of thinking could be applied to like food growing spaces as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Dime, what's your positioning on community gardening? Is there any chance, do you practice this? Can you do this at all where you live? Do people tend to do it around you?
So it's a very interesting perspective. We have one nearby. It's about like a 10-minute walk from my house. To be very honest, I've never been to it because it was always one of those like, oh, it's so nearby, I'll go. And then COVID happened, and now I can't go because we're for our fourth lockdown. And basically, I've heard about garden a lot, and it's quite funny, the stories that come out of it, that the neighbors actually complained sounds that the and wanted us to just get.
Unfortunately, you're breaking up a lot. I would love to hear what you want to say. Perhaps you can try turning off the video again so that we can hear you better.
Okay, if me, just.
I think that's better. Yeah.
Up, Joss.
I wish we could hear what you're saying. It's such a pity with these technical meetings, with these online meetings, that it's often the case that technicality gets in the way of people actually meeting. Because how nice is this? We dialed in from 3 totally different perspectives, and you never have the chance. We would never have met without this platform. And now we can't really talk together because our internet is leaving us. And none of us can do anything because of technology.
It's a shame. I guess some platforms seem to handle it better than
I don't know. But then they might be difficult with data protection or whatever it is. So all of them with their own troubles. So I guess it's just us. We're back.
Well, hopefully she can rejoin.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
But also,
go ahead.
I mean, I was also going to say, but there's also maybe ways that it can continue afterwards through email and stuff. I mean, it already feels nice to have made a connection with you anyway. So yeah,
that would be really nice. I'm also wondering, what I think about a lot with gardening is, because this is also why I showed the video that I showed in the beginning. Oh, hi, here you are. You're back. This might be better. Then we can hear your point again, because we were both keen on finding out what you had to say.
Oh, okay. So did you hear the part about the rabbits?
This is much better.
No? Okay.
We just heard that you decided to never go because then COVID came.
Okay, so what happened was we have this garden nearby, and I've never been to it, but the neighbors have complained that the cows are making too much noise. And at one point they had I think like really cute brown rabbits, because you know the common ones are the white ones with the red eyes, and you can buy them anywhere. But these were like the cute brown rabbits, and someone stole them at night, and this was posted on the Facebook page. And there was another incident where, they have this trust system, right? Like you put up your harvest and you put it on the table, and then you come and pay how much you think it is, how much it's worth. But this doesn't really work, and I think it's a cultural thing, because it's like from a scarcity mentality, because we have a very free gift habit here, and it's not a very nice habit in my perspective as a business owner, because, for example, if you go and buy a pair of contact lens like I did, I got a free gift. If you buy a USB from a shop, you get a free gift. You sign up for credit cards, you get a free gift, free umbrella, free thermos. So I think this is a very cultural, it's a very hyper local issue that we have here. So I'm very keen on hearing how this has been able to work in other countries, and how it might be a I mean, we can't just tell everyone like, okay, don't steal rabbits, because we have to find out why. Why are you stealing a rabbit, and why are you taking someone's harvest without putting like $10 or $20? So I'm not really sure what the answer is, but it's just coming from a, I guess it's a very skeptical, like I definitely see the value in community gardening, like 100%, because the dialogue, as Joss has mentioned, people find out like, oh, this is the ingredient in our soup. And I think like we look at, if we zoom out and look at the cross-continental conversations that we can have, like I did with, I found out that a lot of our ingredients here in Malaysia, we have a lot of similarities with African countries, especially Nigeria, which I thought was amazing, because we have all these indigenous herbs that will never get exported because, one, it's not going to last throughout the shipping. But then I'm seeing it on other cooks on Instagram, and I'm like, you guys use this too? Because I really never, it's not a beautiful coriander that we're used to in a supermarket. It's a wild thing that we didn't know was edible. And there is another type of weed that I found was edible, and I looked it up. In the UK, it's considered a weed, but over here you can eat it, and to a point where you can even turn it into capsules and you sell it for a lot of money in health food stores. So like, I think like what Joss was saying was like, yeah, you really do discover a lot of things in your backyard. And I think the beauty is having that conversations about what you found with someone else and seeing the similarities that you both have. And then you begin that relationship about the unknown.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. And I think that is one of the beauties of social media, after all the things that might be difficult about them, that we can all of a sudden share these perspectives, and that the three of us can share perspectives now from completely different countries is amazing. And the fact that you found these herbs and that you share them with people in Nigeria is absolutely incredible. That is very, very beautiful.
Could I bring up something I'm not sure what's the format here, but could I bring up something that's been on my mind for a while?
Of course, of course.
So I've been working on a story for the past 6 months. And what happened was, I was in this location that in the 90s, it was a big fruit orchard. So it's about the size of 300 swimming pools, 300 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And I was there for 6 months. And there was just all these things growing, and because I'm a big foodie, so everything I see, I'm like, can I eat this? Can I cook with this? And the owner, this amazing lady, her name's Angela, and she was starting to get really annoyed. She was like, no, you can't. And then I was like, but why? So we were in our second lockdown, I believe. And at that time, it was like the shelves in the supermarkets were getting cleared, urban gardening was a trend on Instagram. Every other friend was trying to grow some herbs on their balcony. And I was thinking, like, what if all this space could have been our food supply? But then after, like, I think my 3rd month there, I realized, like, it was the question of, why does it have to be edible for it to be valuable? So in place, what she was growing was not a potato patch or whatever, like, because her justification is correct. Like, you can buy it for a lot cheaper in the supermarket. You're not going to toil over the soil and get your tiny potatoes. But what she was growing was, over the past 25 years, was endangered dipterocarp species. So rainforest trees that are already, there are some that are considered endangered on the IUCN Red List of threatened species. Some are even considered extinct in the wild. So I didn't realize all of this. I just thought, like, okay, it's a really cool place. There's like really big trees. I'm in a rainforest. But why can't she grow something I can eat? I'm here for 6 months. And I think that really made me question, like, why do we value things that can only be edible, like for example the seed bank. Like why would you like just conserve stuff that can only be eaten and not the larger biodiversity? But I know this is called food culture. Yeah, we're talking about community gardens, but I just wanted to bring that and hear what the both of you, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Joss, maybe you go first.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you said, and also really important, because I feel that these sort of, let's say, quite often our relationships with nature are based on these ideas of like utility, of extraction, so we're always seeing them as like resources from which we as humans can take, and so we give these things kind of use value, and I think that is super problematic, particularly to only see like a space like a community garden as a space for growing useful plants for humans, because I think that kind of relationship that we need with plants needs to really change, so that we, yes, okay, it's important, that we recognize that these things can feed us. Of course, I mean, we can't survive without them. But I think it's sort of recognizing that actually that, to really enter into these kind of relationships with plants properly is to enter into them, beyond this kind of extractive kind of idea of nature, and that actually, yes, we can learn a lot from plants. They have a huge amount to teach us as well as they do nourishing us, and I think for me, community gardens can be a really important place where you can set the groundwork for allowing ourselves to kind of enter into these different relationships beyond just seeing them as sources of food. But in learning about plants and learning to grow them, then that can definitely be a starting place, to begin. And that's I really love that this person like growing these plants, these endangered plants. That I think it's really beautiful.
I would love to see images of the place now that you described it. It would be really beautiful. I'm sure it would be beautiful to see what it really looks like. Do you have photos of it?
Yes, I do. Plenty. I was there for 6 months, so every day it was like, oh, new leaf.
Is it close to you? So did you go there or did you stay there really?
So I stayed there. So it was a creative residency. I was there for my upcoming issue, which focuses on seeds. So I went to this place not to do a story initially. Like it was just a space to work. And what's amazing about this place is that actually none of my friends knew about it. They legit thought that I was in like a rural area just based on my Instagram photos, because I'm not very active on WhatsApp and things. So they really thought I was in a rural area, but in fact it's only like half an hour from the city.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And when you go in, the microclimate there is amazing. Like you don't need because here it's really, really hot, like really, really hot. And you don't need air conditioning there at night. When you wake up, you can see the mist, like just that nice, that mist in the morning. And I saw a lot of insects and a lot of animals that I don't normally see in the city. There were wild boars, there were snakes, there were all these. I'm not a big insect person, but there were a lot of things I didn't see.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. So I do have lots of photos. I can send you the link, and yeah.
That would be really nice. I would like that. Maybe we can start an email and then you can email them to us or send it to us somehow. Sure. And I think that's actually a very, very important point. Also, the question of greenery, what value does it have when it's not edible? I think it's on a small scale and on a very large scale. Like on a very small scale of planting community gardens, also a lot of greenery can actually help the plants grow and flower better. And some of the plants are not edible, but they're very valuable for the bees or as a habitat, or they can be planted along the side. So I really think that starting this appreciation for whatever the green space is very important. And the importance lies within educating these various fields, I think, because so often we tend to neglect or ignore things that we don't know much about. And I think it's really beautiful to raise points like this one in order to understand also the dependence, the codependence of all of these plants on one another. And it's nice to see kind of a movement that there is a new appreciation for gardening and for at least understanding what is behind gardening, even if we can't all practice it, which I think is really nice. And how did you, yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to say to that actually I think this idea of the kind of interdependency that we have with other species is really important, especially like, you know, if we can start to change the way we think about plants, is like recognizing that they have their own agency, right? That they have their own desires, their own particular kind of behaviors, and that it's not just us kind of manipulating them, but actually that works two ways, right? That the plants throughout history have changed the way that we, you know, you think about histories of domestication and stuff, which are quite often just like one way, as if, you know, it was human ingenuity that changed this plant. But actually, like, they have had a huge impact on the way that we also change. And I think, you know, I wonder how we can start to, through community gardening, like start to recognize the agency of plants, and so that we see it's not just us kind of deciding how they do, but actually we might enter into these relationships that maybe are more collaborative. How do you actually collaborate with plants, rather than just seeing them as this kind of thing that we manipulate, or that are kind of that have their own liveliness, right?
Absolutely. Maybe to sum up, Dime, you want to tell us about your new issue that's coming up and the topic, because I'm very interested that you chose the topic of seeds and what importance you give to the seeds.
So my upcoming issue, it's called Seeds, Plates Volume 4 Seeds officially. And I guess I picked seeds simply because it was, first it started from coffee, because I was in Berastagi in North Sumatra, Indonesia, and they were talking about how everything was once orange plantations, and they had to basically clear it all and replant coffee. But it's a really long story, so I can't really say much here. But it goes a lot longer than that. So that's how it started. And from there, I so happened to be at this space that I was talking about, Rimbundahan. And I wasn't going to write about them because they didn't have anything I could eat except nutmeg trees. But eventually, I think it was the idea of seeing how a living seed bank by one person is possible. And I think the story grows a lot from there. And it's about, again, like looking for the stories in your backyards and appreciating what is not deemed valuable by mainstream, but to make that judgment for yourself by seeking out the alternative narratives that are unpopular, but it's more an empowering point of view, I guess, for someone to just take charge and say, I will look into this issue for me, not for anyone else, but for myself. So that's what Plates Volume 4 Seeds is about.
I think that's the most beautiful conclusion we could probably think of. I really want to thank the two of you for hanging in there despite the technical difficulties. And I sincerely hope we can be in touch. And it's amazing that you signed up for this Food Culture Days dialogue and that this made us connect. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you guys again sometime soon. And when you're ever in Berlin, you should come visit. And maybe we can share our email addresses either in this chat briefly before we leave. I can't hear you guys, so I'm just...
Sure. I didn't know I could unmute. You know, it's the awkward, do I unmute? Or
yeah, it's so strange. I don't know what the best format is either.
Okay, I will send, if you email me there, and then I'll send you the links to that location.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
Cool. Thank you so much for this space. Thank you for holding this space. It's amazing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be part of this with you. We all are now. That's nice. joss.hamilton@gmail.com, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my partner's laptop has got a finished keyboard and I couldn't find the at sign.
Well, we figured out all the technical difficulties and we made it anyways. So thank you very much for being there.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. And I hope we speak again. Lovely to meet you. Thanks. Bye-bye.